And we're back with Nitebites. I'm your co-host, Robin Coleman.
I'm your host, Clark Garen, and before we left, you were complaining about the Iraq War. Now, what's so bad about that war?
First of all, weren't we supposed to be in Afghanistan?
Well, Afghanistan got to be too big a mess.
Okay,
You
so
know, somebody realized we couldn't win it.
Mm-hmm.
So they went and picked somebody we could beat.
Right. Little
Saddam Hussein.
Yeah, a little repercussion for what happened to Daddy, in my opinion.
But, I mean, I think that military campaign worked great. We took that place over and nothing flat.
And now what are we doing?
Well...
Nothing.
Well, that's...
It's a police-occupied state. We're not making any progress. It's
horrendous.
horrendous.
Killings are down. They aren't killing.
So is our economy, and that's part of the reason why.
Okay. Well, you mean we should have put money, putting money in Iraq was worse than putting money in the inner city? But wasn't that better than putting money in the inner city?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Help Iraqis instead of Americans?
Yeah. Great idea.
Well,
it's truly disgusting.
Well, the real problem is you can't give people democracy. You have to take it. And I never liked the Iraq War. I never liked it from the start. I'm very disturbed that McCain does. But one of the things I realized when I read Bob Woodward's books is that Iraq really could have been a success. The campaign to overtake the country was very successful. It was the occupation that failed. Because when these nutcases in the Bush administration were looking for people to run the occupation, the fact that you had experience anywhere else in nation building, didn't care.
Right.
The fact that you had experience with working with tribal people, didn't matter. The only thing they wanted to know is whether you were against Roe versus Wade. If you were against abortion,
right,
that was the criteria to be hired. And they hired the biggest group of idiots you've ever seen.
I completely agree. And it really disturbs me on how the right is so Christianly driven. It's so Catholically driven. And that's the whole point of this problem, I think.
Well, you know, that's something that we on the coast, the two coasts who are more liberal, are going to have to address. The other night I was watching Ben Stein, who's a very brilliant humorist.
I love Ben Stein.
He was on, I believe it was Larry King. And they also have Robert Rubin on, who used to be, I think, our Treasury Secretary, Secretary of Labor under Clinton, one of those things. He's big in the Obama campaign. Right. They were discussing economics. And Ben Stein really understands economics. He's a very wealthy man.
Definitely.
And he was agreeing with everything that Rubin was saying on behalf of Obama for economics. And Rubin finally confronted and said, "Look, Ben, you agree with us. Why don't you join us?" And he said, it just came out. He wasn't expecting that. And it came out. One of those utterances he wasn't planning on and probably wished he hadn't have said. He said, well, I'm pro-life. I could never be involved with you because I'm pro-life. I could never be involved with anybody who wasn't pro-life.
The separation of church and state was what this country was based upon.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. And that's a really frightening thing, and I think everyone needs to think about that. It's terrifying. It is the road to fascism, in my opinion.
But the real problem is that this is, unfortunately, a democracy. Everybody gets to vote. And while I share a lot of your ideas, I'm beginning to look at the concept. We have this big block of people in the center of the country who are one-issue voters.
Right.
You're against abortion? Great. I will vote for you. I don't care what else you want to do. If you're against abortion, you have my vote. I don't care if you're going to put me in the poorhouse. I don't care if you're going to put me on the street.
Which is what's happening, by the way.
Yeah. As long as you're against abortion, you have my vote. And so
those same people are behind the death penalty.
Well, I said abortion. They're not pro-life. They're pro-fetus. As long as once it's born, it's okay to kill it. But these are not necessarily people who think logically. They think emotionally. But the problem is there's such a big number of them that those of us who do think logically are going to have to start realizing we're going to have to do something to appease them.
How do we bring logic to the center of the country? And to some parts of the coasts as well.
Well, it's you broads who are going to have to pay the price, because you're going to have to give up the right of abortion. While you still have some other rights, you're going to have to do something to get these people on board. And just as Lincoln said, we can't live half free and half slave, as he said, 150 years ago now?
Something like that.
It doesn't seem like we can live half in favor of abortion and half against abortion. It's just as big a division. And
every time we take away the rights of a human being, we're actually detracting from what our, the fathers of this country actually came here to set up.
Yeah, but the problem is that the people in the center of the country, they believe the fetus is a human being with rights too. Now, while I might disagree with that, and you might disagree with that, as I want to make it clear, I am not happy with this. I support the right of abortion. I think that these people are wrong. I think it's a travesty on our Constitution. But I'm a pragmatist. I'm looking at this and I'm saying we need them to get off of that issue and look at something else, or they're going to take me down that road to poverty.
Right.
They're going to not only down to poverty, they're going to take me down the road to a loss of my rights. And it is...
And a loss of our international favor, for that matter, too. We've become from one of the most beloved countries to one of the most hated. I was in Europe recently, and there was a lot of anti-American sentiment. People actually didn't want to admit they were from this country, and that's sad. That's so sad. I can't.
What have the Europeans got against us?
The fact that we're in the Iraq War and that we are this police state getting involved with everything, even if someone doesn't want us to, and there was no reason for us to be over there, but we're going backwards, I understand. But it was shocking to me to see USA with a big circle and a line through it. A lot of anti-U.S. sentiment.
Well, you know what fascinated me?
What's that?
Was over Georgia. Because the Russians had every bit as much...
Which Palin can see from her house, by the way.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
But not Georgia. She can only see Siberia. Well, maybe there's a message in that she can see Siberia. But the same rationale that George W. Bush had for going into Iraq works as an explanation about why the Russians went into Georgia.
Rationale and George W. Bush, again, a contradiction.
No, the same rationale, the same reason, the same not reason. He went into Iraq to supposedly protect the people from an evil leader, and the Russians went into these two provinces of Georgia who wanted to be Russians. They didn't want to be Georgians. They didn't like them. They didn't want anything to do with them.
Right.
And so Russia went in to protect people who were loyal to them. And somehow that's not okay, but going into Iraq with people who had nothing to do with us is okay. But there's just no credibility to the argument.
None whatsoever.
And and that's one of the things that disturbs me about both Barack and McCain, is that none of them are addressing that point.
No, that's true.
And the thing that bothers me the most is this acceptance of torture as a negotiating technique, as a interrogation technique. And a question about, whether the Bill of Rights applies to everybody. I never thought I would live to see that.
No.
But we have to start looking to do something to make people more aware of these rights. And I think it starts from taking the issue of abortion off the table. We've got to let these people win, or they're not going to listen to anything else. And I hate to say that, but that's what it looks like. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Please stay with us.